Chanel here, your menopause nutritionist. For those of you who are new to my channel, this is my story of my menopause journey. So I thought I would start here. I have a podcast called The Menopause Nutritionist that has more than 200 episodes on it. I'm going to start sharing some of this content here on YouTube so you can actually get to know me a bit better. The podcast I just do as a voice. So YouTube is just a different platform for me to be able to share. Up until recently, those episodes have been in the form of Instagram Lives or Facebook Lives. And now I feel like this would be a much better idea to have them all in one place where you can access the information whenever you need. So I wanted to start with my story so you understand why I do what I do, and maybe you might hear some of similarities as I share my story. And I think this also highlights that menopause and your menopause journey is so individual and unique to yourself. So I'm going to give you my menopause story today, and I truly hope it helps you. If you would like to listen to my podcast, then just go look up Menopause Nutritionist and you can find all of the episodes over there. I share as much information as I can to help you on your menopause journey, and I truly hope it helps. Okay, so my menopause story, basically I'm going to start it from the age of 40. I am married to Gary, so I'll give you some background. I'm married to Gary. We met when I was actually very young. He was young too. I was nearly 17, he was 20, and we were actually studying architectural drafting together. So the reason I mention this is we just celebrated 30 years of marriage this week, which is very exciting, and we are celebrating the full week. I feel like you have to. If you're married, you'll know what I mean. Marriage is quite challenging. So we have a great marriage, and I'm so grateful for him. And we are blessed with 3 daughters. So our girls are grown up now. We have one still at home, so not quite empty nesters, but nearly there. So at the age of 40, I'm actually coming up 52 in next month, 52. But at the age of 40, I would say, is when I found CrossFit. And so I'm super grateful for finding CrossFit when I had just turned 40, and actually friends of ours, I was visiting with them and they were going to CrossFit, and so I just tagged along with them, and I loved it. I loved it because every workout was different, and I had all my life been a runner, and I still love running, but I was just bored with what I was doing. So CrossFit was just, I loved it. So it wasn't very long before I started competing in CrossFit, and a few years later, at the age of about 43, I found myself trying to qualify for the CrossFit Games. I was just trying to give it a crack, and so I was pretty competitive for my age group. And I was training very heavily, like 2 to 3 hours a day. I had a weightlifting coach. I had obviously CrossFit programming. I was doing yoga every night. Like, it was the whole thing. So I totally understand what it takes to live the athlete life, because I lived it for 2 or 3 years, and it's tough. It's hard work. So at the time, it was my weightlifting coach actually, who he actually said to me, "Gee, you're just not putting on any muscle. Like, something seems to be amiss. Like, you're training really hard and you're so thin and so lean, and you're just not building any muscle." And that's actually not long after that is when my symptoms started. So I started having heart palpitations, like waking in the night, hot sweats, and at the same time I started getting very heavy bleeding, and the bleeding would last for longer than the normal period time. Like, I was bleeding for 1.5 to 2 weeks, and it was just really getting annoying. And so I ended up going to the doctor because I was like, something's going on here. And she sent me for scans, and the scans kind of came back and said that I had this condition, like some sort of, I can't actually remember what they called it, to do with the thickening of the lining. And so I was like, okay, so it sent me to the gynecologist. I had something called an ablation, where they actually, they kind of sear the sides of your uterus, if you like, and it stops the lining growing back. So it pretty much stops you having periods. And I had a Mirena put in at the same time. And I remember the gynecologist, he said to me at the time, he said, well, we should not see you for another 5 years, or no, it must have been 7 years. And that should be fine, and you'll be in menopause by then, so no worries. And I sort of went through all this, like, you know, and no one really, apart from him mentioning menopause then, you know, when this thing was going to be taken out, that was kind of the end of it. So I went forward thinking that was kind of the start of maybe me being in perimenopause, because I was having these hot flushes and like these symptoms going on. Lo and behold, I was actually in something called low energy availability. Now, I've just done a podcast episode with Dr. Carla, and we talked all about low energy availability. So if you're listening to this and you think you may be in low energy availability, then I would definitely recommend you go find that podcast episode and listen to it. It is something that is very easy to happen if you are high level, you know, exercising and you're under eating. And it's not just under eating from a calorie point of view, it is when your macronutrients can be off. For me, I slip into it quite easily if I go too low carb. So I have to be very careful. And once you've been in low energy availability once, you are way more like able to slip into it again in the future, which has happened to me again. Would you believe it? That's another story, and listen to the podcast and you'll hear the whole story on that. So that was actually not perimenopause then, it was actually low energy availability. And the thing with low energy availability is that it has exactly the same symptoms as perimenopause. So you have to be very careful. It shows up in exactly the same way. So that was me though, thinking, and up until recently, my menopause story was me starting perimenopause at 44, but actually it wasn't. It was low energy availability. So as I progress, the reality was I actually wasn't in very good health. I ended up going to a functional doctor a few years later, like I kind of just, after I had those, procedures done, kind of like got back to training, like went, and actually, to be fair, a year or two after that, I decided I'd had enough of trying to be an athlete or trying to compete at the CrossFit Games, and I actually left CrossFit because I have a bit of an OCD personality. I'm a bit all or nothing, and so I had to kind of leave to get clarity and closure on just, you know, not being able to compete. And so I went and did street parking, which those of you who are in the CrossFit kind of community will know it is an at-home program, and it's really great, but I was only doing the Metcons. I didn't do any strength. So the Metcons are just kind of like maybe 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and it's like, you know, kettlebells or dumbbells, or it's not really super heavy resistance training where you're building good muscle. So I made that change, and at the same time this belly fat came out of nowhere, and I didn't change my, you know, nutrition. I was still exercising every day. Sure, it wasn't the same level or intensity that I was doing, but it was just my belly fat. So it wasn't, the rest of my body looked super in check, but this belly fat was like, I felt like I was about 4 months pregnant, like that sort of belly fat. So I ended up going to the functional doctor because I just felt off. Things weren't going well. And it turned out that I had really severe leaky gut. and I'd been living with this for like a lot of years, and this had been why I couldn't build muscle when I was training, a few years before, because I wasn't absorbing any nutrients. So this is what put me into low energy availability, because I was basically, none of my food was being absorbed or being used for the right things in my body, and the processes weren't being used, which was frustrating, and I didn't realize it. So that's what caused that situation. In the process of that, I also found out that I had the MTHFR gene. Now, I am just going to touch on this because I will branch out and do some more episodes, like kind of diving into these specific topics. One of them was, after I had my 3 girls, I had severe postnatal depression. Now, when I found out I had the MTHFR gene, it's a gene mutation, and 40% of people have it. So I don't have it severely. One of my daughters does though. So it's a genetic mutation that can get passed on. So all of my girls have been tested. One of them has it very badly. My sister also has it very badly. So it is, it can be passed down the line. So it's good to know these things, but it can affect your mental health. And so my doctor, when he said this, he said, basically, if I knew you before you had your babies, we probably could have avoided you getting postnatal depression. So that's pretty big. And I want to do a whole podcast episode, obviously exploring that subject as it is, because I ended up being on antidepressants for 21 years. And it wasn't until I found out this information that I haven't been on antidepressants, and I haven't actually even talked about it or thought about it now, probably for 5 years. And so that is huge. So we'll do a whole other, podcast episode just about that topic, because it is that in itself. So many women I know are struggling with being on antidepressants or having depression, and it is a terrible place to be, and it's awful, but it's a big part of my story. So that's why I wanted to touch on it. So if you're listening to this and that's you, there is help out there, and just know that. And I also want you to know I hear you, and I know, and I see you, and I know how hard the journey is. It really, depression is tough. And also, as your menopause nutritionist, depression shows up again. It's one of the symptoms of perimenopause. So, well, it can, it's not for everyone, but it definitely can. So that's why I thought it was important to just touch on it. So once I got my leaky gut under control, that process actually, I had some food testing done, found out I was intolerant to eggs and also dairy. Kind of knew about the dairy, didn't know about the eggs. I was eating lots of eggs, like 5 eggs a day. And this was probably contributing to the leaky gut situation that put my health in such bad shape. So want to touch on that, because that actually probably will be a whole other episode as well. When we are giving our body food that is not able to be processed, you're intolerant to it, it causes inflammation, and there's always side effects and consequences to that. So for me, I learned the hard way about that. So I am very careful with dairy. Is probably the worst thing. I can have bits of egg now, but I'm still very careful about it. I wanted to just mention it because this is part of the process of, I think, why I'm such a good nutritionist, because I have experienced lots of issues or challenges with food, and so I see it quite quickly in other people, and then I can help you on the process, which is what my job is. So back to the menopause story. I still obviously thought I was in perimenopause from the age of 44. However, now I actually like to think of it from when I actually started getting musculoskeletal symptoms. Because in the process of this journey, going to the functional doctor, I went back to my GP wanting to get some help for the menopause that I maybe wasn't actually in. She just mentioned HRT. Now, at the time, I did not know anything about HRT. I know a lot about HRT now, and I'm actually using it. But at the time, I knew nothing. And so for me, if I don't know something, I just, no, I'm not doing that. And I didn't have the capacity. She didn't help me understand it at all. So I just switched off from that, and I kind of thought, am I ticking the boxes on everything? And lo and behold, I actually found Dr. Mary Claire Haver on TikTok, would you believe, scrolling TikTok. And she started talking about lifestyle changes and eating protein and lifting heavy weights and intermittent fasting. And I was like, okay, there's more to this than just HRT. And I wasn't opposed to HRT, just didn't understand it. So I then started trying intermittent fasting. And those of you who tune in and listen will know that I've used intermittent fasting for many years, on and off. And it's been an amazing tool, because when I started using intermittent fasting, I actually found out I had some insulin resistance. So one of the major factors for me, and motivating factors, was I wanted to get rid of the insulin resistance, because metabolic health is about being metabolically flexible. So when you have insulin resistance, it means that you can't use your fat source for fuel. You can only use glucose, and that is not good for the long-term health. And we know that as we age, metabolic health actually becomes very important, and it's linked to some of the, very bad diseases that can kill us. So I started intermittent fasting because of metabolic flexibility, and it was an incredible tool. So when I'm coaching and teaching, I like to refer to my toolbox or my tool belt and all the different tools in my tool belt. Or I like to refer to it like a jigsaw puzzle. So for me, what I've learned from, where we've started from 40 plus is that we need to have these little pieces of the puzzle. There's some bigger pieces of the puzzle that are really important, like fit, exercise, lifting heavy, protein, nutrition, and sleep. I would say those are the three bigger pieces of the puzzle. And then all of the little ones, there's so many of them actually. That's obviously what I teach on my Thrive program, putting all of those together to make the puzzle that is you feeling your optimal self. So that is kind of where I started from that point of view. But in the process, in the crossover, ironically, I started studying to be a nutritionist. And I was studying to be a nutritionist because I wanted to be a sports nutritionist. I wanted to help other masters athletes like me who wanted to achieve. They were still competing, maybe they were just weekend warriors, but they were still competing like in their events. And generally, I had got myself into low energy availability, not understanding my nutrition. So I was like, that's who I want to help. I want to help other masters athletes. So I was studying nutrition, I was studying sports nutrition, and then I ended up going on to do health coaching as well. So that was my focus. But as I started on social media sharing my menopause journey, I've landed here as your menopause nutritionist. So I still am a sports nutritionist, but I just don't tend to practice sports nutrition as often as all of the women I get to help on their menopause journey, because there's so many women. Like, I took the long road, like it took me years to put all of this together. The reason I have my Thrive program now is to fast track your results. So you don't have to go through the painful process of suffering like I did. You can fast track your results and get yourself on track quick, smart. So that's really like basically the journey of me becoming a nutritionist and now you're a menopause nutritionist, which is like what I like to refer to myself as, because that is my zone of genius, I suppose. So I help women not only get their body compositions back, because I did that for myself, but feel your absolute best, because I know that that is possible, because I did it for myself and I help hundreds of women do it all the time. And so you can, if you're listening to this and you're not feeling great and maybe you're suffering suffering should not be part of our vocabulary here in our midlife. We should not be suffering. So if you're feeling like, bogged down with menopause symptoms, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed because you don't know about HRT. I just had someone message me today saying, when do I start HRT? I will do another podcast episode talking that whole HRT kind of chat through, because there's so many things there, and there's so many things out there. And I understand also that there's a lot of confusion, like everywhere you turn, and I get that this is social media, but there's a lot of people saying things that maybe aren't necessarily right. So I guess my little bit of advice for you is, and the reason I guess I'm telling you my story, so you understand the knowledge I have to pass on, not only my own personal experience of being in menopause and on my menopause journey and what I have gone through, but also my nutrition training, my sports nutrition training, my health coaching. I've recently just been in Sydney at the menopause conference, learning from some of the world leaders. I'm constantly learning and evolving and keeping up to date with the latest research. So when you see someone say something, I want you to go and find out where their qualifications are, and is there any research or science to back up what they're saying? Because this is very important, and I can understand why women get so confused, and hopefully the information I share with you will help alleviate some of that for you. So back to my story. Sorry, I'm good at talking. Okay, back to my story. I obviously studied to be a nutritionist, sports nutritionist. I'm here. I have been for the last few years helping women in menopause. I work with people one-on-one, like clients one-on-one, and I also run my Thrive in Menopause program, which is a 12-week program. It's broken up into 2 phases, 2 6-week blocks that focus on mastering your nutrition and then mastering your lifestyle. And so this is your fast track to being able to get yourself on track. And my program is very education based. Like, you do get meal plans and high protein recipes and all of that as well, and accountability, but education, because when we know better, we do better. And that is what is missing here. So back to my story. Now my menopause story is, like I mentioned briefly, is based on musculoskeletal issues. So once I got all of these things under control, like I was intermittent fasting, I lost the belly fat, I was hitting my protein requirements. In my studies of becoming a nutritionist, I actually had to do a 12-week case study on myself, and I used menopause and protein as my topic. So I put myself into 12 weeks of having to prioritize my protein, and that was an eye-opener, and I had incredible results. And this is why I run a free protein challenge 3 times a year, because this is the area I see women struggle with. One, not understanding how much protein they need to eat, and then actually making it happen. So if you are listening to this and you are struggling in that area, or quite frankly, the protein challenges are so much fun. I run them 3 times a year. There's another one coming up. Just check the comment section and I'll make sure I've got the link there so you can sign up or get on the wait list for the next one. I think I had 900 people and 900 women in the last one. It was, really, I know there's such a big need for this, and protein is something that is so beneficial. Like, it's the menopause nutrient. So that is something that you can definitely join in for free. It's amazing. So then I found myself back at CrossFit about 4 years ago, and I love CrossFit. And it wasn't long before I was competing again. I think I just have that very OCD personality, so I was competing again. Last year, I actually decided to do high rocks as well. So I, in the journey of training for high rocks, found myself again in low energy availability. So it's very easy, even from me knowing how to eat and how to do all this stuff, it's very easy to slip into. But I did do Hyrox last year in Brisbane, and I won my age group and qualified for the World Champs. It was very great, and then unfortunately I qualified for the Down Under CrossFit Championships here in Australia, and I injured myself very badly at that event. So I have been rehabbing my back, and my goal is to get back to Hyrox. I'm not sure if I will return to CrossFit or not. I'm unsure at this time, but I am back building muscle. So I have been documenting my own calorie deficit over the last 7 weeks, because when I found out I had perforated my disc in my back, I was told that I couldn't do any exercise. I could only walk, and that was very, like, a huge change. I went from competing, training 2 hours a day, to walking, and I couldn't lift the groceries. I couldn't pick up anything. I couldn't do, I really was limited. And so in that period of time where my disc was healing, obviously my body composition changed. I couldn't do any resistance training, and now for 7 weeks I have been lifting again and still repairing my back on, returning back from injury. And I have been on a calorie deficit to help me build muscle and just lose some body fat. So I have been documenting that as well. And the reason that I've been documenting that is so, one, that I practice what I preach, and I totally understand the journey of being in a calorie deficit, because I'm showing you I'm doing it myself. But it's been really great because it has made me create a whole new fat loss module for my next program as well, because generally people come to me because they want to lose the belly fat, or they want to tone up, or they want to build muscle, and they want to change their body composition, and that is really important. So that, my friends, is kind of bringing us up to date to where I am now. So I will now be publishing videos like this for you over here, and we can stay connected. So if you have any questions at all, drop them here in the comments. I would love to interact with you and answer anything. Make sure you're following, and I will keep you updated. I've already talked about some of the other topics that we will talk about in the future. I have got some awesome guest speakers that I have been interviewing, and I am excited to bring this to you. So if you are still listening, then yay, I feel like we're going to be friends in menopause together. And I will also tell you that I put out a weekly recipe, high protein. Generally they're sweet treats because I have a sweet tooth. So getting on my email list is a good place to be. I email those recipes out every week. So I will make sure the link for that is here in the comments section. You can grab it and let me know if you love them as well. So I'm excited to grow this community and help you more on your journey. Have the best day. Thank you for being here. And like I said, any questions at all, please let me know in the comments. Have the best day, and I'll talk to you next time.